Got a good bite.
What you're hearing now are sounds from the Dane County Farmers Market, the one that takes place on Wednesday mornings from about 8:30 to 1:45. This past week, there were about 24 vendors lining the streets outside of City Hall on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And people were buying all sorts of things from the different vendors.
String beans, asparagus, strawberries, and sugar snap peas, and cheese curds.
I bought some brownies, and I bought some kohlrabi.
I got some bok choy, green beans, kale, and snap peas.
I was there also this past week, and I bought some gorgeous rhubarb and some beautiful asparagus that I can't wait to cook up this week. So here's why I'm talking about the Wednesday morning farmers market. It is one of many hundreds of events that take place on city streets, on city sidewalks, and in city parks. In fact, in 2017, there were 349 street use event days. So bottom line, there are a lot of events happening on public property. So much so that the city is taking steps to figure out what to do about all of them. So, on today's episode, we're asking, does Madison have festival fatigue? Hi, I'm Abby Becker, and I'm the City and County Government Reporter for the Capital Times.
I am Lisa Speckhard Pasque. I am the Metro Reporter at the Cap Times.
Hey, I'm Erik Lorenzsonn. I'm a tech and culture writer for the Cap Times.
And this is the Madsplainers. Okay, so we're talking about street use events and Madison's many festivals. I was thinking about this when I feel like in the summertime, every time I walk outside of my front door in a near East Side neighborhood, I'm always thinking, shoot, what event did I not know of? What did I not hear about? Or just a couple weekends ago, I had some friends in town and forgot to let them know that Ride the Drive was happening. So they had to get all rerouted with, John Nolan being closed. So yeah, I don't know about you guys, what your experiences have been with all the events in Madison.
Rerouting is probably the number one annoyance. And I've taken part in many of these festivals myself. So, I have love for the festivals. But when I did not have a car and was reliant on the bus system, I remember one Saturday, which is already kind of rough for the bus system because they don't run as often. Some event on the square had rerouted everything, and I was so confused, and it took me so long to get to where I needed to get. So I was not feeling the love for the festivals that day, I will say that.
I'm definitely not a festival hater, but sometimes I do feel the annoyance, I admit.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortage of them, especially in my neck of the woods, near East Side. There's Willie Street, the Atwood neighborhood, Central Park. These are all kind of hot spots for various festivals, and it's like every other weekend you can guarantee there's something going down.
Yes, especially in the summertime.
Which, they can be annoying, but also so many of them are so beloved, and I have been part of many that I would be like, no, you can't take that away. The Crazy Legs Run, for example, that is a massive rerouting of traffic, but it's also really fun, and it's a fun Madison tradition, so I see the tension.
Yeah, no, I was talking with a neighborhood center director about the Willie Street Parade and the Willie Street Fair, and he described one moment of the parade as a near religious moment. So these are very important, which I love the Willie Street Parade. That's my neighborhood. I am all about that. I don't know if I'd go, as far as a religious experience, but
yeah,
fun.
I was in that parade one year. I don't remember how that came about, but I was flower man. I just had flowers in my beard, and I was handing out flowers to everyone, and you were there, and I gave you a flower.
You handed me a flower. You did, and it made my day. Yes, I put it in a vase. I was so happy about it.
Yeah.
How did you even get to be in the parade?
My sister, a former Madisonian and a person at large in the Willie Street neighborhood, somehow made it happen.
Person at large.
I went to the parade to pick out a spot to watch the thing, but my sister was, oh no, Erik, here's a bunch of flowers, and you're going to hand them out to people.
I love that so much. When you first began the story, I was about to ask how old you were at the time, but then you said the word beard, and I took the context clue, yes.
You were a grown-up at the time. Yeah, this was just like 2 years ago, I think. So, I mean, yeah, we've been talking about how many events these are, and
is it too much of a good thing?
Is it too much of a good thing? Well, the number of events have increased over the years. So there are more. They're taking a toll on city agencies. Neighborhood residents, are getting upset about it. Events bring in noise. They bring in more people with their cars. The cars need to be parked somewhere, and there's not enough parking. So much that some neighborhood associations are calling for a limited moratorium on any new events. And the city is also at the very beginning stages of a process to look at the ordinance that regulates these street use events. So for anyone out there thinking, wow, there are too many things going on, you might be right. There might actually be too many events going on.
Well, and how many events are going on? I feel like if I had no idea, my number would be much lower than what it actually is.
Yeah, so since 2007, the number of street use event days each year jumped from 196 to 349. And when we're talking about street use event days, these are events that require the use of the street, essentially. But it's also any public right-of-way. So that could include, sidewalks, terraces, alleys, bicycle paths, things like that.
Yeah. That's a huge increase.
That's a huge number.
Huge.
Yeah.
So we've had this big explosion in street use events. Why is that happening?
That is a very good question. So I recently hosted a Cap Times talk on this very question of, does Madison have festival fatigue? And Kelly Lamberty, the community events coordinator for the city, had some insights into why the number of events in the city has increased so much over time.
Initially, I would say back in the day, late 70s, early 80s, there was a concerted effort on the part of the mayor, who happened to be Paul Soglin at the time as well, and to have people come downtown, to come and enjoy the Capitol and have events and, make it a place where people come to have a good time and enjoy themselves. And that was very successful over the years. And I think in the last few years, there's been a few things that have really increased the number, and it has to do with we've had national and international events come in, like Iron Man, and they really, like the area. They like the people that are here. They've had great events here, and so that's become known. There's a lot more venues, particularly in the Isthmus area. King Street with Majestic has become a big. They have a series of events. McPike Park. There's also Breeze, which Breeze is being used more as a concert venue. And Olin Park, in fact, probably more towards the athletic type of activities, but also very popular. Outdoor music is popular. Theme runs for fundraising has gotten very popular. And then since early 2017, we've had a fair number of political rallies and marches and things like that.
But another huge part of this is that the commission, the Street Use Staff Commission that oversees the approvals for the permits for these events, they rarely say no, which I thought was interesting. So they really do try to work with event organizers to make their thing happen. If, for example, I want to organize a fun run and I want to go up State Street and around the Capitol and back down State Street, that, for whatever reason, may not work for bus rerouting and things like that. But, instead of the city just flat out saying no, they would likely work with me to sort of change the route of my run, for that to happen. So because of that, there are just more.
I wonder what it takes for them to say no.
Oh.
How extreme does your event have to be for the city to put its foot down?
Yeah, do you have examples of any?
So I think that the question about how extreme does it have to be, it has to be a water slide down East Washington Avenue. that was a legitimate proposal that the city received, and they rejected that. So that did not happen.
How? Tell me more about the water slide. How long would it have been?
I think this was just an organization that would seek to get water slides in cities. I don't know. And they were like, oh, let's have one down East Washington Avenue. Once I learned that, then I spent a lot of time thinking, would I do that? Like, would I pay to go down that slide? I think I might have. I think I would have had to. So
absolutely.
But that one got a no, and that is the only project I know of that hasn't gotten a permit.
It's funny because I was just whining about how the so many events reroutes traffic, and I'm like, but I want this one too. This one sounds like a good one. Why did they reject it?
Yeah, that's that divide between, these events are fun. We like them. Neighbors like them. But also, they do have this negative effect that the city has to kind of work out.
One thing that you're talking about here when it comes to this conversation is equity. Can you talk more about how does that enter into the conversation here?
Yeah, well, that is a big concern, and I think this becomes the most apparent when we're looking at Metro Transit bus routes. Nearly every weekend in the summer, Metro Transit was working on a different bus route due to an event, because of a road closure, that kind of thing. And so when this happens, I public transit dependent riders then need to figure out where their new routes are, I think in a survey. Survey respond, I think 70% of them had said that they had trouble finding a new bus stop due to a detour. So then that population of riders, is not catching their bus, and they could be going to work, they could be going to a doctor's appointment, they could be going to pick up their kid, and they're not getting on that bus. So that's problematic. And I think if you look at, especially on weekends, the bus routes that go down East Washington Avenue, if you miss that, the next one doesn't come for a whole hour. So, you're really, not getting to where you want to go, in an expedient fashion. So, yeah, so Metro is quite worried about it. When I was talking to the general manager, it was his belief that Madison is already past capacity, and they're really wanting to work with the city to get a handle on this.
Yeah, just to get an idea of how many of these events are disrupting bus routes. Do you have an idea of these 349?
I remember talking to Metro Transit, and they were saying, especially during the summer, it's every weekend that they're changing bus routes. So it's all the time. Essentially, is what I came away with.
It's a lot of extra work for a lot of people,
well,
not only at the city but at Metro, and yeah.
And I think it's important to note, too, that the bulk of these events are happening on the isthmus, that narrow strip of land between, two lakes. And, event organizers, I think, want to have their events, located centrally and, in the heart of the city. We have the Capitol, you're close to the lakes and State Street, all these iconic Madison, pieces of imagery. But then when they are so concentrated, that does make it difficult, because that means that, the bus routes closer, downtown are being affected more. Those neighborhoods, are being affected more. Some people say the city should promote events moving off of the isthmus and out of downtown and into other neighborhoods of the city. Barbara Harrington McKinney is one of those people. She is an alder for District 1 on the city's west side, and she was recently on the Cap Times Talk panel that I moderated about festival fatigue.
When you're talking about everything is destinational and everything is on the isthmus, we want to spread that out. The north side, they have their events, but there's really not a lot of things that's happening on the west side. As we're looking at spreading and looking at Madison being a destination point, it's not just on the isthmus. People travel. If there is something that's spectacular that's happening on the west side, they'll get in their cars and they'll drive to the west side as well.
She's also one of the key organizers of Westfest, which is a somewhat new festival on the west side. It takes place in the summertime in Elver Park, and it is going to its 3rd annual year. That festival, as Barbara describes it, is really about building community and a sense of neighborliness among the various communities on the west side.
How do you bring communities together? You give them food, you give them entertainment, you give them a place to be. And so that place making is building community, and it's intentional, but people are coming together. I'm not trying to sing Kumbaya. We're not talking about that. But we're talking about bringing communities into a space where they get to know one another and there's relationship building.
So what are we talking about doing about this problem? What sort of solutions is the city looking at?
So right now, the city is, like I said earlier, at the very beginning stages of this process. And in Madison, sometimes these things can take a while. But where the city is at is they're still leading discussions with neighborhood residents, anyone who's interested, to come to these small group events where they can brainstorm and things like that. So they're very much in the informational gathering stage. But eventually, what that will lead to is likely, a proposed change to the ordinance that regulates street use events. And so I imagine what this could look like is something that basically would augment the current ordinance, maybe, strengthen it, maybe put language in there that, might make it more restrictive for events or, I don't know. They just do know that I think changes are necessary, but are trying to figure out what exactly those might be. I did, want to note that the city, made a point, the community events quarter made a point to tell me that they don't hate events and they don't want to stop them, but they are at a point where something, needs to be done about them. So here's Kelly Lamberty clarifying the city's intentions.
People love, outdoor music, and it makes the city incredibly vital, and there's things that people look forward to every year. And so we don't want to get rid of events. We just want to make sure that we understand and come to a good balance of the people who live here and want to get around and so that they can enjoy their city as well.
Yeah, I think just one day in their shoes, like if I had to do their job for one day, I would say, okay, we need to drastically cut down all these events because of how much work it probably.
Yeah, well, and it's hard too when, I was speaking with someone from the Tenny Lapham neighborhood, and in Tenny Lapham there's, Bree Stevens Field, which is, that's a slightly different animal than just street use events because they do have an agreement with the city, but but the opinions are so divided. You could have one neighbor who says this absolutely must go, we cannot have this, and then in the house next door someone might say, I moved here because I like everything going on. So that makes it really difficult for city officials, local alders to find a solution that will make everyone happy. Gary Callis is the executive director of the Wilmar Neighborhood Center, and he said that he's heard people complain about events, but they're often just about little things.
Most of those folks who will share their angst about various events, usually it's about the margins of the event, right? If you could just turn it down, if you could close an hour earlier, if you could reduce one of your days, yada, yada, yada. But most of those folks will say that the events on the east side bring great value to the community.
Patty Prime is the president of the Tenny Lapham Neighborhood Association. She's heard a lot of mixed opinions from neighbors in her area as well. She made the point that some people moved to the neighborhood because of all the events going on.
We've grown in our neighborhood by about 50%. And a lot of the people who move here, they are moving here specifically, as Gary says, for place, because the Isthmus is downtown. The proximity to the Capitol and to work is fabulous. And then there's festivals and there's activity, there's things to do. And so it's attracting a lot of people who want to live here.
I'm curious, Abby, you wrote a cover story about this. How did readers react? Because people do have strong feelings about their festivals. What is your sense of, do people in Madison have festival fatigue?
A lot of the reactions I heard were sort of agreeing with the points that the article made. Even people who really like all of these events recognize that there are a lot going on. And others did say, yes, I am sick of this. Every night of the summer, they might be hearing music from a different area from their front porch. And sometimes you just want like a night of quiet, in your home with your windows open to enjoy the summer air. Yeah, so I think some people are rightfully, tired of all of this stuff going on. A couple of people did say that that these are a good thing and that, we should be keeping them the same.
Well, are they generating money for someone, presumably?
Right. So that's another wrinkle to this whole conversation is that, a lot of these events, we talk about the big five on the Near East Side, the Waterfront Festival, the Orton Park Festival and Willie Street and all of that. So those are fundraisers for local organizations. Fête de Marquette supports the Wilmar Neighborhood Center and has for a very long time. So those support local organizations.
I guess even like Crazy feel like this is a charity run. And
yeah. And so, but the tension, I think, comes in where if you have an event in a neighborhood that is affecting neighbors with noise, with parking concerns, with traffic rerouting, and that event that's happening there isn't even helping your neighborhood, that's when I think neighborhood residents are like, I don't want this fun run coming through my neighborhood because it's making money for, something else, maybe a private organization or whatever, and we already have so much going on. I don't want to have this here. So then the whole for-profit, not-for-profit and raising money for community organizations, I think there's a tension there as well as far as, who the money, is benefiting. And that's it for this episode of the Madsplainers. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or wherever else you find podcasts. You can also leave us a rating or a review. We definitely want to hear your feedback. The next episode of the Madsplainers will be out in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can check out other Cap Times podcasts like The Corner Table, about culinary issues, food, and entertainment. You can also listen to Wedge Issues, a podcast about the 2018 elections in Wisconsin. You can also follow us on Twitter. Erik is at Erik Lorenzsonn. Lisa is at Lisa Pasque. And I'm at @Becker_4. Thanks for listening. Bye, y'all.